to the Metal Command Podcast.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Metal Command Podcast. Tony here with you. And today I'm here to talk about one of my favorite power metal bands that sort of goes under the radar and really doesn't get recognized for how great they are. And that is a band called Scanner. Now, for those of you that have never heard of Scanner, Scanner ended up getting their start back in the 80s on Noise Records, which, back then was like the label to be on if you were a metal band in Europe, or a power metal band for that matter. And their debut album, Hypertrace, came out in 1988, which to me is a classic power metal album. I mean, definitely still an album that I listen to on a regular basis today. And, to me, it's a power metal classic. That was their debut album, which, by the way, is coming out. They are reissuing it. I'm sorry, it's not coming out, but it's being reissued December 8th of 2023. So in a couple months, you will have the ability to buy a reissued version of that album. Now, they also have a new album coming out in January of 24 called The Cosmic Race. It's a concept album. I am excited for it because their last album, which was called The Judgment, which came out in Massacre Records, I believe, in 2015. That album was phenomenal. And, one of the things I love about Scanner is two things. Number one, no two albums have ever been the same. Now, some of that was due to lineup changes, but musically even, no two albums are the same. And then the other thing that I love about them is Axel Julius, the guitar player, has a pretty unique style of playing that I absolutely love. Over the years, they've had some different lineup changes, some different singers. They've taken some long breaks in between recording albums. But nevertheless, this is a phenomenal band. Now, I first ended up getting into Scanner when I started off doing my radio show. And when I was doing my radio show, I think I've discussed this in some other podcasts, but I would go back in the record library while I was playing, basically airing a public service show or whatever I was airing at the time. That I was at the station, but I wasn't like live. I was actually playing a taped show essentially. And I'd go into record library, go into the production room, and I would listen to random metal bands that, I'd never heard of them. Now this is back in 1998. So it was right around the time Scanner's Ball the Damned album came out, probably shortly after. And I found the album Hypertrace, which was on vinyl, which was actually the original copy Noise Records sent to the radio station back in the day. And I loved the record to the point where I ended up going and buying the Japanese reissue of the album, which had a bonus track called Galactose, which I'll get to here in a second. So that's how I ended up getting into the band. And then years later, I ended up friending Axel Julius on Facebook, getting to know him a little bit through social media. Really cool dude. I really love talking to him. One of the things I do like about Axel, too, is he gets my sense of humor. So if he does watch this, definitely, it's funny. He does get some of the sense of humor of some of my Facebook posts that I put up. But really, nevertheless, really cool dude and a very talented guitar player. Now, with that being said, let's talk about the album Hypertrace because it is being reissued. It is a concept album, and I'll give you the rough story behind the concept a little bit. The concept is basically this. They took 7 guys out of prison. And it's basically, 7 guys were taken out of prison. They were genetically manipulated. They were trained to be like an elite fighting force, like an elite combat unit. And what ended up happening is those 7 guys ended up turning against the people that were using them, that were manipulating them, that were, that had trained them. And so they were sent out in space and each one in a separate rocket, and each rocket blew up except one rocket didn't blow up, and one of those soldiers was rescued by some aliens and then transformed into somebody that was going to come back and bring world peace, etc. So that's kind of like the rough storyline of the album. And again, it's a very, very good record, and it's a really cool album. Now, the interesting part about it is a few things. Number one, I'm going to pop this track listing up in here, and I'm going to show you. This track listing here that I'm showing you is not the track listing the track listing's not in order of how it is on the album. So when you get the CD or you have the vinyl, you have all the songs on there, but they were not put in conceptual order. So what I did is I created an iTunes playlist, putting them in conceptual order, in order of how the story goes. And now that I've done that, it's really hard to actually listen to the album with its original track listing, because I'm in my iTunes playlist and I'm like, I got to listen to it in chronological order. You'll also notice a song in there called Galactose. Now, Galactose was not on the original album. Part of the reason it was not on the original album is because of the fact that it had a different sound. It was recorded during a different recording session. So it was never really put on the album itself. And of course, you had limitations for how long an album could be when it came to putting out a vinyl record. But for you folks that are into Scanner, I want to play an interview clip here with myself and Axel Julius from 2015, where we talked about Galactose and why it wasn't on the original album itself. So here you go. Check this out.
The song Galactose, which you begin the compilation with, my question for you, Axel, is this. That song was obviously part of the concept behind Hypertrace, but it was never included on the actual album. And out of curiosity, why did you guys not put that song on the album?
Yeah, first it was at this time, you have to remember that there was always these vinyl limitation. You have 20 minutes per side to get good quality on the vinyl. And our producer said, okay, you have the choice to have 8 or 9 songs on this vinyl thing, and if you make these Galactose, what we recorded before we made this session for the album, it was 2 months before, it was another technician who did this, and it was mixed different. And he said, okay, it sounds different, so he would not like to have this on the album, and we should drop it. And I said, okay, but it's for our conception, it's necessary. But he said, no, remember the 20 minutes per side, etc., and then you can do what you want, but don't use this song. And yeah, for vinyl we had to do this choice. And after this, coming to the CD theme, it was at this time where the break was from vinyl to CD. And then it was no problem anymore. And we said, hey, why is it not on the German version of the CD? And there was no reason anymore not to do it on the CD. But the record company did the master tapes like it was for the vinyl. And when we made the contract with the Japanese people, they said, hey, there's no reason why that should not be on the album. So for CD, it was no problem.
And that was Axel Julius talking about the song Galactose. I think it's a phenomenal track. They put it on the compilation, the Galactose tapes, which has some re-recordings of old songs, and of course a compilation of past songs that Scanner put out throughout the years. And I personally think Galactose is one of the best songs they've ever recorded. And since it is part of the Hypertrace storyline, that's why it's in my playlist, even though the song does sound different than the original album did, because again, as I said before, it was recorded during a different recording session. Now, here's something interesting about the Hypertrace album as well. If you listen to the song Locked Out, you will notice a very, very familiar voice when it comes to the backing vocals. Okay? And it is a very young Ralph Scheepers. So Ralph Scheepers sang some backing tracks on this album. And the interesting part about that is he was brought in because they thought the other, the singer that was originally going to sing on it, he was sick and they didn't know if he'd be able to record on it. So it's an interesting story. I'm going to let you hear it from the man himself, Axel Julius. Again, this is the interview we did back in 2015, and he tells the story of how Ralph Scheepers ended up on the Hypertrace album. Check it out.
Well, if you look at the liner notes in Hypertrace on your first album, Ralph Scheepers did a lot of the backing vocals on the record. And then, of course, on Ball of the Damned, he did a guest song with you as well. puppet on a string. So, how did Ralph get involved with the band early on when you guys started out?
Yeah, we had the problem that when we wanted to record Hypertrace, that our singer was ill. He could not, 2 months before the recordings, he could not get a word out of his throat because he got some really, with his voice, he got really big problems. He had not to talk for 6 or 7 weeks, and we did not know if he could do the album. And our producer said, okay, we have to have a backup, and this was Ralph. He just was engaged to make the album if Major could not sing this, you know. And if Major was not fit for the album, Ralph Shapers would be our singer. And he was in studio, so he was paid for that, you know. And when we recorded the album, then Major could sing it, and he said, okay, I can just help you doing choirs anymore because he's fit. He can do that, his stuff, his job. Mm-hmm. And so while I'm here, I can make you help in the choirs, you know, in choirs, in maybe some lead voice to make a second voice or something. And then we worked 2 weeks with Ralph. And then coming thinkings about, Ralph is looking for a band, our singer was ill, should we ask him, you know? But you can't do that because you are friends with your old singer, and you want to get, you don't blame him in asking the other singer to be your frontman, you know? It's not possible. Yeah, but, you know, after that, when we did the album, it was just 1 year, then Major left the band, you know, and I said, okay, maybe it was the wrong decision not to ask Ralph for being singer in Scanner.
And that is Axel Julius talking about Ralph Shapers singing on the album Hypertrace. And it's an interesting story. Can you imagine that album with Ralph Shapers singing on it? Now, Ralph was singing in Tyrant Pace back then. You know, and Kai Hansen hadn't left Halloween yet, so Gamma Ray hadn't formed. So could you imagine if Ralph was singing with Scanner, right? What would that have sounded like? I mean, even though I wouldn't take anything away from Michael Knoblich, who sang on that album, I wouldn't want to change anything on Hypertrace, but it's one of those things when you think about it, you're like, what if? Like, what if it happened? What would the album have actually sounded like? So it's great to put those interview clips up there, and I really can't wait till the new Scanner album comes out. I definitely would love to have Axel Julius on my podcast. Definitely a very humble guy, very, very talented guitar player, and really, really good songwriter as well. And I have no doubt the Cosmic Race, which comes out, you know, in a few months, you know, in January 24, I have no doubt that album is probably going to be good. But at the same time, folks, I'm really excited for the Hypertrace reissue. The only version of the album that I have is the Japanese pressing, which was like a reissue, which had Galactose as the bonus track. I paid out the ass for that back in the late 90s, I think is when it came out. But that is a tremendously awesome album. And I encourage you, if you like the album, go check out, if you check Hypertrace out on, you probably find it on YouTube somewhere. I'm sure there's plenty of people that have put songs from that album up there, but check it out. Seriously, check the album out. If you like it and you like the concept, I also encourage you to get the reissue come December 8th. And if you're like me and you like an album storyline, like in conceptual order, just arrange an iTunes playlist like I did, and you have the story in order, in chronological order. So with that said, thanks for watching. Check out Hypertrace by Scanner. They have a new album coming out called The Cosmic Race, coming out in January. And I believe a new single from that album is going to drop sometime in November, which I will then comment on whenever that comes out. So thanks for watching. Stay metal. If you like what you see and heard on this podcast, please give the video a like, leave a comment, and of course, you can subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell anytime to be notified when I post a video. Take care.